Hey everybody, welcome back to Adventures in Old Fashions, or if this is by chance the first video you've decided to watch, welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Stevie B, and a couple of things occurred to me over the last couple of days. One, most of my videos are being made at the end of the day. It's dark because I've been hiking until dark pretty much every day. So I thought, you know what? I stopped a little early today and I thought I will make a video so that you guys can kind of get a better view of what I'm looking at. Um, so this is where I've decided to make camp tonight. It's a little bit wide open, a little bit exposed. I am in underneath a kind of a solitary pine along a little kind of a rock ridge with some other pines. So I'm not, too exposed, but if you hear the rustling in the background, that's the tent hung up in the tree, airing out. Um, this morning, everything was covered in frost and it got below freezing. There was ice in my water bottle that I left out. Uh, so I had to pack everything up damp, and so I'm just airing it out now before I set it up for tonight. Anyway, the other thing that occurred to me over the last couple of days is that I don't think I've told you guys my trail name. I know I hinted at it and I left it a teaser. You got to do that clickbait stuff with the YouTube. But I don't think I actually came back and told you guys what my trail name is. So every good story has a beginning, and I'll start with the beginning of my trail name story. So 20 years ago, I lived out here in Colorado. And back then, I was a young man, fit and strong. And, I heard everybody talking about these 14ers. And for those of you that don't know, a 14er is a mountain peak that's over 14,000 feet of elevation. So I got in my head that I'm going to climb these 14ers in Colorado. I think there's 54, maybe 55. I think there's a couple of them that are like 13,999 and some inches. And depending on the barometric pressure, they may or may not be 14ers. But I think there's 54 for sure. So anyway, I got myself a guidebook with all the 14ers and the different routes to climb them. And I got a binder that was a log to keep track of them, so that I could put those feathers in my hat. And I set about bagging 14ers. And I'd go out on a weekend and I'd do 1, 2, I did 3 in a day a couple of times. Scurry up to the top, take a selfie. And back in those days, we actually had film that got developed, and then you got a hard copy of the photo, and then you could put that in these books. I don't know if you guys know what they were, but they were things with pages that you could write in, like the date, the weather, the time, how long it took you. And basically kept a diary of these 14ers. And so as I'm planning out, my accomplishments, I notice in this guidebook that there's the different trails, and there's the classic one, and then there's alternates, and the easy parts are in green, and then it gets blue as it gets harder. Some of them are like purple, they're really hard. Red is going to be challenging. And I keep seeing this like black squiggly line along the sides of these peaks in certain ones, and it's listed as the Colorado Trail. So I looked into it a bit, and sure enough, Colorado Trail runs right alongside like a dozen of these 14ers. So I got thinking, well, if I do this trail, I can just run up these 14ers as I come across them and check them off my list, and that'll be the most efficient way to get to this accomplishment that I built up in my mind. Well, one thing led to another. I moved back to Wisconsin, and now 20 years later, I'm out here doing the Colorado Trail. Originally, I had planned to do, a half a dozen of those 14ers that I haven't done yet. on the way. But with kind of getting a late start, and now with me being kind of old and feeble, there's one that I might do here coming up. It really depends on the timing. Winter's coming. So we'll see how that goes. And it also depends on how I feel. But anyway, so that's how I got onto the Colorado Trail in the first place. So now fast forward to Labor Day weekend. Mike's out here hiking with me. We're doing segment 6. And, we're just kind of talking about stuff as, we're passing time. And, one thing leads to another. And we're, kind of talking about, I should have done, that 20 years ago. I should have done this. And, but basically my life is one long drawn out cautionary tale. It's kind of funny. We were joking around that, if you got some kids at home that aren't behaving, you just start telling them about Steve. And, you sit them down and you're like, look, straighten up, because if you don't get your act together, you're going to end up like this guy. And you start telling them about my life story. And, you get through the college years and the kid's like, that's made up. That sounds made up. There's no way, that he's real. There's no way that happened. And then, mom sticks her head in the door and says, no, he's real. I met him once. Ugh. And then off she goes. And, by the time you get through my mid-20s, the kid's crying. He's begging you to stop telling me. You're scaring me. You got to go in at night and check under the bed to make sure Steve's not lurking there, ready to give, bad life advice. That's the gist of it. So we're talking and joking around, and one thing led to another, and we, speaking of cautionary tales, Melville came up, and so we're talking about the classics and how obsession and downfall and how this trail might do me in, and realize that this trail really is my 500-mile long white whale that I've been obsessed with in one way or another for the last 20 years, almost half my life. And that, I'm kind of focused on this, despite, other people maybe would have called it a day by now, but I keep pushing through. And, I don't want to say I'm obsessed, but I'm definitely driven to finish this. And so we kind of joked around that, I'm the Captain Ahab of the Colorado Trail. So that's it. Ahab. That's my trail name. And, when you come across hikers, if you stop and talk for a minute, everybody, always introduces themselves by their trail name. And I was talking to some of the Continental Divide guys, and they'll like, Ahab. It's like, you just a big Moby Dick fan? And I'm like, well, no. And I kind of explained it, kind of how it came about. And they're like, man, that is like the perfect name for like what you're doing and where you find yourself. And the one guy's like, yeah, stick with that, because otherwise somebody's going to give you some stupid name and you're going to be stuck with it. So yeah, stick with Ahab. And that made me think of Animal House when Belushi's handing out the names to all of the pledges and he gets the Flounder. It's like that's what I don't want to be, Flounder on the trail. I'm Ahab. I'm good with that. I think it fits. I'm going to come out on top of this thing. I'm going to conquer it, and I'm going to come back in one piece at the end of it. I'm guaranteeing that. Give you guys kind of one last little look around. Just gorgeous out here. I saw an elk just a little while ago back up kind of around that area. Just a single cow, which I thought was kind of odd, way out exposed out in the middle of nowhere. But that's the first elk I've seen. I've been hearing them bugle. Came across a couple of bow hunters earlier today. Talked to them for a little bit. They were coming back in. They'd been out all morning. they hadn't had any luck calling or really any action at all. They found it pretty amazing that I'm out here without bear spray or thing that goes pew pew. But I told him it's an issue of weight. That's something you got to carry all the time for rare instances where you need it. And the guy was guaranteed that he'd leave the toilet paper at home and bring a 44 instead. We laughed about that a little bit. So I've had a lot more need for toilet paper out here than I have for a 44. So I'm going to call it a night. I'm going to go set my tent up. I think it's dried out enough. I'm going to get something to eat, and I'm going to relax a little bit while there's still some daylight left for a change. So you guys have a great night, and I will talk to you later.